a time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Australia's best independent news and opinion radio show, The Daily Australian, with Nicola Charles and Jason Olbourne.
Hello, good morning and welcome back to the Daily Australian for Monday the 14th of July. I believe that's Bastille Day if you're French. I think it's my brother Zach's birthday if you're going to be 21 today. And it is Monday. There you go, episode 132, and welcome back everyone. And Nicola Charles, what a big week we had last week. I have a feeling it's going to get even bigger. Welcome back. Hope you had a great weekend.
Yeah, I had a great weekend, except for on Saturday, my husband and I were shopping in a little village near us called Emerald, and there was a little market on called the Lost Woods Market. So we wandered into this market and we got stopped at one of three entrances, which is basically a hole in the fence, by this security guard type person in a purple vest. And he said to us, you know, years after the engineered pandemic, he said to us, "Have you QR coded to get in?" And we said, "No, we don't QR code." And he said, "It's free." And I said, "Would you like me to explain to you that nothing in life is free?" I said, "Why would we need to QR code to come in?" Because obviously if it's numbers and it's a fire thing, they've got clickers and they say, you know, too many people in there, but it's a wood, it's a forest. So I don't know, you know, what the numbers would look like. Anyway, then he said to us, "Are you local from the area?" And we said, yes. And he said, "Can you prove it? Do you have your driver's license?" And it was really like a show us your papers moment. And we both looked at him and we went, no, you know, I'm not going to show someone my name and address and my driver's license to go into a country market. It was absolutely extraordinary. And I would advise anyone everywhere, because there's a massive market near me that's much bigger, and certainly you don't have to QR code to get in. But what's going on, Jason? You know, we've got stories of these iPods on trolleys when you go into the Colesworth supermarkets, and now you've got a QR code outside of a pandemic to get into a market. Now, there were lots of, dare I say it, Chinese tourists there, and they were enjoying the market. And of course, they were already fully indoctrinated to QR code in and out every single place they go in life, because that's how life is in China. So they didn't need to be asked. So it was all, you know, the Australians that were getting stopped. And I just think this is appalling. I'm not prepared to do this. You're not getting a digital footprint on me where I am essentially stalked by an unknown entity without a warrant. You know, you get to follow someone when there's a warrant for their arrest. So horrible experience. And we've got the iPads coming in the supermarkets, Jason.
Yeah, we do. Well, let me ask you, did any other people reject the idea of QR coding whilst you were being spoken to?
Nope. They all just did it. They were all tourists, though, but they all just did it. That's what I mean. They don't need to be asked, because their onboarding for surveillance has already been completed overseas.
Well, let me rewind the clock a bit before I head over to the supermarket. Back in 2012, I went to the US, and it was my brother's wedding, and he was getting married in San Francisco. And on one occasion, we were out somewhere there was a cinema, and it was one of those cinemas that you had to walk up a whole flight of stairs, maybe 40 or 50 stairs way up the top. And there was nobody on the stairs, and you could see that it wasn't particularly busy. And yet there was a little sign out the front with one of those red ropes, and it said "Queue here." And
wait to be seated.
right down at the bottom of the stairs. So once you queued there, assumingly someone had to come downstairs and greet you and then get you to walk upstairs. And I looked at it and I go, why am I waiting down here? I'm just going to walk upstairs. And my brother, who was then a compliant American, sort of said something to me, and I just kept walking up the stairs. I'm not waiting. And I got to the top of the stairs. No one said anything to me. No one cared. But then I looked back down and there was 12 people in the queue waiting. And I thought, when did Americans become so subservient? And that was the observation I made to my brother. I said, you guys, well, you're not American, you are becoming one. But where does this, where do you get off with this? And he explained it to me in these weird terms. And this is 13 years ago, about compliance. And I thought, you are kidding yourself. If you're coming from Australia to America to become a communist, this doesn't make any sense to me. That just blew
I'm not
my
doing
mind.
I've said before, Jason, I'm not doing it. And you know what? I didn't do it in the pandemic. I used to go up to the QR codes, hold up my phone so people thought, yeah, she's doing it, and just walk off because, this whole thing is ridiculous. You have no right. They have no right to track and trace people without a warrant. That's the law.
Correct. And this voluntary compliance, this weak as piss going along to get along, like, oh, I'll just do it, I'll just go along with it type of thing. Like, no way, no. I was the same. Look, I coached my son's soccer team. I think maybe they were under 7s or under 8s during that COVID period. And honestly, they turned up at the fields, and the rules at the time were that if you were playing, you don't wear a mask. But if you're on the sideline outside, you wear a mask. Now, in the under 7s or under 8s, whatever it was, the coach is on the field with the players. Now, would you believe it that I was the only coach that did not wear a mask on the field, running around with the players? These idiot coaches were standing there on the field with a mask on. Are you serious?
Who was that woman? I was embarrassed because she was also called Nicola during the pandemic in one of the states in Australia. She did that famous clip. I think it was about tennis or soccer or AFL. I don't know. But she basically, and she realized she was stuffing up as she was speaking. And she was basically saying, you may not touch someone else's balls. Do you remember that? And it went to air, and it was like, right, so we're going to play ball sport, but we can't all touch the ball. How's that going to work exactly? I'm so sick of it. I don't know how people are not so sick of this now after the fact, and the knowledge that they are going to try and do this again because all of the important people are running around trying to work on this World Health Organization thing. And I'm not falling for it. I am not falling for it now. I didn't fall for it then, and I won't be falling for it again. But unfortunately, the majority of the population do seem happy to be, as you say, stood over, controlled and told what to do. When this little person in the purple vest, I mean, he seemed like a nice guy, said to me, oh, you don't QR code. I mean, imagine that, Jason. You're an exception to the rule. You're an oddity. You're probably, let's face it, a cooker, because you won't QR code to go into a market in a forest that was crap, by the way. It was like Etsy market, and 60% of the market was food stands, the food trucks. And it said it's a 30-minute wait when you get in this queue because there was like 100 people at each one. Who waits 30 minutes to get a slider out of a van? So it was very disappointing. And my husband and I just sort of basically walked through and out the other side. And, he looked at me and he said, this is Australia in 2025. You just cannot reason that they have brought us to this place and got away with it.
Look, I 100% agree with what you're saying, and it's caused me to reflect upon society today many times over and just realize. Now, 10 years ago when this information war began, I thought that the purpose of me posting technically contrarian ideas or things that were against the narrative but were fact-based was to change the system and hopefully save the world, that the world would wake up. 10 years on, I realized that there are 30% at least, probably more, that will let themselves out when the world changes. They will literally take themselves out. They will boost themselves into oblivion just because they cannot cope with what's coming. Like, this is how crazy it is. It's why there's a bandwagon. It's why we have the communist becoming cultural Marxist revolution, which is what it's become, which is technically a Ponzi scheme that you can have now, an industry of the NDIS here in Australia that is a bottomless pit of money to fund people in perpetuity for a variety of reasons. And I gave that example recently of that fellow that gets 5 staff members a day, 7 days a week, 35 shifts a week, which we worked out was almost $500,000 a year in wages alone to fund that for one human being. It is not sustainable. And so how is it possible that this can go on? And yet it only grows and grows and grows. And shortly we're going to put up a screenshot of an article where the Labor government's been told that they can't achieve their economic plans unless they raise taxes. They're now at that stage. That's how bad it is. But before we get there, let me show you what happened to me when I went into the local supermarket this morning to pick up a couple of items. I was going to cook one of my specialty dishes. I had my eldest coming over to visit, and I went in to pick up a couple of items, and I saw this. Look at all those little white screens there, and it says how to shop with a scan and go trolley. And then you've got this screen that says touch to start. Now, hold on a second. When did this get here? And all of the trolleys that you use, those sort of medium-sized ones, have now got this little plastic thing fitted to them where you click in your little iPad, your little scanner. Now,
Jason, you shouldn't be shopping there. I'm sorry. This is what people are screaming at the screen right now. You shouldn't be shopping there. That's the whole point, right? I'm shocked that is near you. That shows me that they're trialing this in the smaller areas to see if people will go along with it. And, I've said before, call me crazy. Many do. I don't think it's only the items that are getting scanned, right? This store is owned by BlackRock. Right. So you've got someone in front. What's the closest thing to that screen? Oh, sure. They've been able to do this for years. They don't need an iPad. You could walk past a telling machine, a teller, and based on all the barcodes and QR codes that are on the food, you could just walk through the entrance and it would tot up your trolley and you could pay and you could leave. This whole thing where there's an iPad in front of you is for something else. It's very close to the human being pushing the trolley. So are these iPads going to remain there when they pull pandemic 2? So let me just tell you, one of the dirtiest places, they were right about that one thing, is the handle on a trolley. Why? Because when you sneeze, you've sneezed onto the trolley essentially. So they're going to get people to touch these iPad screens, and then the next person comes along and they touch the iPad screen. Is that like the don't touch someone else's balls, don't touch someone else's iPad? I mean, these people are insane. There are so many hypocrisies. This is the reason why I don't go to those stores anymore. In fact, I've been banned by Coles.
Yeah, you did mention that. Look, I have a slightly different attitude. I can't get everything that I want from where I want to shop, so I've still got to walk in and buy the occasional items from these particular chains. But I'll tell you what I notice when I go in there is the demise of the same chains. Like, they are at peak profit and power right now. But when you walk in there and you realize that there's very little to no customer service, at a recent trip to one of them, there was one human being on a checkout. One.
Yeah. And not many customers. Have you noticed? They're thin on the ground, the customers.
Right. And unless it's like, an afternoon on a Friday or a Saturday and everyone's stocking up for the weekend or for Saturday night and you get a big rush. Now, when you walk through the store, traditionally at the smaller supermarket, whose name I won't mention, that does sell great knives, their shelves are always almost a quarter to a third bare, always, since COVID. But now I'm noticing in the big ones that they have a lot of holes. And when you ask for specific items, they go and have a look at the back. They don't have them. Oh, there's a reason this is happening. Like, there's all these logistic errors and mistakes and a slump. And I'll tell you something else. The staff, they try, but some of them are very arrogant. And there's some middle-aged people working there and have been for a while and working in the delis and places like that. And then you go out the back and you ask questions, and they're kind of clueless. You ask for a certain, particular item, and they don't know where to look. They don't know how to find it. What I'm saying is that the quality is dropping, the service is dropping. And here's another one for you. It was actually last night. I'm driving home, and I had to fill up the car, and I called into one of the chains, like a convenience store service station. Filled up the car, went inside to pay. And I'm waiting and waiting. I must have waited 5 minutes. And this girl comes running out, and she had a plastic bag in her hands. She said, "Look, I'm really sorry. I would have thought that a multi-million-dollar corporation would have more than one labor person working, one staff member." So there was a queue of people trying to pay for their fuel. There were people lining up outside, and you can't do it until the console operator presses the button and allows the fuel to start. And they're waiting. So at 5 o'clock or 4:30 on a Sunday afternoon, at a big convenience store service station, one female staff member alone working there. I find that unacceptable. She found it unacceptable. And all I could say to her was that, look, don't worry, it's all cool. But I tell you what you do learn is what you don't want as much as you do. And she says, that's right. I'll be out of here as soon as I can. It's serving a purpose. And isn't that interesting?
Well, someone posted, and I think I shared it on X. Maybe I didn't yesterday. I was sort of chilling doing my Sunday, and I have a little bit of NDIS news on that. Someone sent me a picture of, do you remember when we were little kids, like I'm talking toddlers, and they were selling and we were playing with those registers, the red button, the blue button, the green button, the yellow button. And someone posted that and said, see, they were always training us to use the self-checkout.
Nice. That's cool.
So yesterday I had coffee and a chat with a friend of mine. Remember, I said they gave up their job as a BDM to work for the NDIS because it was more profitable. Oh, the stories, there are many, but I'll just tell you one. One of the jobs these so-called NDIS helpers get to do, not my friend, but she sees it with other people because they all train together, is they offer these elderly and disabled people a decluttering service, right? So these people are really sick. And she was telling me that this one person in particular was in a wheelchair, right? Was a gentleman. And his wife had died and he needed this decluttering service. And 2 migrants came and they didn't speak English, so he wasn't able to direct them very well. And the NDIS person had said to him, oh, no, it's all right. This is what they do for a business. They declutter, and they're all private businesses and they leave their cards. And then, a number of weeks later, this gentleman noticed that some of his most precious belongings, memories, right, were missing. And then on another occasion, he went to use one of his tools. Obviously, we all collect tools all over our lifetime and they're very expensive. And all the good tools were missing. So these declutterers getting paid by the NDIS to do so had basically come in and helped themselves to all the important stuff. And there was nothing he could do about it because he'd said, yes, get the declutterers in. He had to sign a piece of paper so the NDIS paid them. We've got to be really careful. We've got to more fervently protect our disabled in this country, of which we now know there's more, and also in particular our elderly. These are vulnerable people and they're getting preyed upon. And as soon as they turn up with their business cards and they're salesing these old people and disabled people, they're preying on them. That's what they're doing. And they mention the NDIS and they mention the government, and people still think we live in the old world where the government cares about you. And so they say, okay, sure. And what they're making them do, Jason, is they're making them sign a contract so that when their NDIS payments run out, these people are then locked in to pay them privately. It's really disgusting. If we had real mainstream media in this country, like, a 60 Minutes type outfit, there would be a massive expose about these NDIS scams. But unfortunately, they're not. And people are getting harmed. People are getting ripped off. And I don't feel it's safe.
It's not safe, is it?
No.
It's yet another breach of trust by authority and taking advantage by using said authority and that whole sympathy thing. It's like part of the reason why you can't ever criticize preventative medicine. How dare you? It's a preventative tool. And we were sold as kids that prevention was better than cure. And that's how they sold that whole idea into the mainstream. And now it's one of those bridges that you can't quite cross. Look, I want to show you another picture now in Australia. This story that's just popped up. Check this out. So it's an ABC News headline, and it says Jim Chalmers was told he would need to raise taxes and cut spending to make the budget sustainable. Raise taxes to fix budget, Treasury advises Labor in an accidentally published advice. This has just popped up today in an exclusive by the Business Reporter there. Now, this is
how did
savage.
They get that information, Jason? They got that information, the ABC, following a Freedom of Information request. They weren't offered this as the ABC by the government, and then they were asked not to share it. And they actually shared it. So, God, that's the first brave thing they've done in years.
It's a significant moment, isn't it? So what they're saying is that they cannot achieve these million homes that they said they were going to build. It can't be done unless they raise taxes. So now what we've done now is I believe that what we've hit is what I would call look, this is the peak. This is the pinnacle of the woke agenda being found out. So you can promise the earth. Exactly. You can promise the earth and now you can't deliver. And so they will now be called out on it. The question is who in the opposition is going to be the one to do the calling out? Because this is exactly what happened when Kevin Rudd became Prime Minister in 2007. Brendan Nelson became the opposition leader. He lasted not very long, and he was replaced by, I think it was Malcolm Turnbull for a time. He didn't last very long. And then Tony Abbott came in and he destroyed Kevin Rudd in about 12 months, just destroyed him. The most effective opposition leader I've ever seen, and I was not a Tony Abbott fan at all, certainly at that stage. And you just had to acknowledge how brilliant he was at doing that job. Now, Susan Lee is not the person to do that. We know that. But that doesn't mean that there won't be a leadership spill in the future. And what will happen is you will soon see who will come out and criticise and call out the government that they've now been found out that the only way they can achieve their goals is to increase taxes. Now, I hope it's not some commentator on Sky News, for example, that calls them out. And ironically, here's another interesting observation that people might forget, and it's kind of ghastly when you think of it. But Alan Jones, when he was on Sky News, he used to interview two young politicians. Now, one of them has since been charged and is currently in court for some unwanted advances to an underage staffer and some staffers, Gareth Ward. And the other one was a fellow who is called Chris Minns. And it was only because Chris Minns was a Labor politician, just a pretty much a nobody at the time, but was courageous enough to turn up on right-wing Alan Jones's show on Sky News, that Jones would praise him just for coming onto the show and speaking openly and honestly. And that raised his profile enough that when Jodie McKay stepped down because she got no traction at all as the opposition leader for New South Wales State Labor, Minns was the one that took the reins. And of course, through default and whatever, and Gladys Berejiklian and Dominic Perrottet becomes the Premier of New South Wales. So it's interesting that you have to work on the other side of the fence and in adversity to gain traction and show that you are different in what you are doing. And that was the point there, that's what led to Chris Minns becoming successful. So I watch and see who it is that's going to stand up within the establishment opposition, if anyone. And if they don't go after the Labor government on this headline alone, then you know that they're not trying. That's as simply as it is.
Jason,
there's nobody there.
Labor had one job after this engineered pandemic. One job.
Correct.
To fix the economy, right?
Yep.
They made it very clear they weren't going to fix the harms done, these adverse reactions from their recommended medical remedy. They've even closed down the compensation scheme now. So they had one job left, right? After people appallingly accepted that. I don't think it's right because, illnesses and adverse reactions could still be appearing years later. One job to fix this economy. Now, they made their corporate friends and these big pharmaceutical companies extremely wealthy during this engineered pandemic, which our government sanctioned and got on board with in lockstep. They then allowed them, people like Pfizer, to not pay taxes in Australia, but instead pay taxes in Ireland because they saved a percentage point. That was all explained by the then Senator Rennick. And I don't believe that governments themselves didn't make enormous profits from this engineered pandemic. So don't tell me that the state or the country federally is broke and that you need to raise taxes. Where's the accounting, right? We need an auditor to go in there. Where's the money that the government made from this engineered pandemic? Because if the government itself didn't profit from this pandemic, then it would have been individuals, and I want to know who those individuals are, who privately benefited from allowing these corporations, pharmaceutical companies, Bill Gates and the World Health Organization to profit, and they're still trying to profit from it. That's why they're looking at these IHR amendments and treaty amendments. I interviewed Katie Ashby Coppins over the weekend. I've been hanging out for that for a long time, explaining that these people aren't listening to the will of the people. They're not interested in what we've got to say. Well, you know what? While you sit there getting paid as public servants in the government, you will be transparent about monies received during this pandemic from the actions that you sanctioned. But this is the problem. We don't really have oversight. There should be someone in the Senate. Where are all the good guy senators? Where are all the good guy new One Nation senators? They haven't exactly entered the fray, hit the ground running, right? They're not out there calling these people out and looking for answers. They're keeping their heads down and getting paid. And again, I warned you about this with One Nation before the election. These are the kind of politicians you don't want, career politicians who keep their head down. So now what have you got? Senator Babbitt calling out, he seems to focus on a lot of this paedophilia and childcare stuff. Meanwhile, everyone else ignores it and they're just getting paid on the childcare stuff. You mentioned before the show that a childcare centre has gone up in flames. Now, as soon as you said that, my instinct said to me, Jason, I remember all these true crime shows, these police shows where they go in with their ultraviolet light and they look for DNA deposits, right? To see if someone's been sexually assaulted or something's been going on. Now, the best way to make sure that they can't go in and check for DNA deposits in childcare centres, which is a horrendous concept to even consider in 2025, is to burn the place to the ground. And it seems that for some, conveniently, that's happening.
Well, it's certainly possible, isn't it? Here's your headline. So, Plate Alone Centre, the second fire at a Sydney childcare chain in 4 days. What we've learned is that New South Wales Police are seeking information after a second childcare centre fire in the 4 days. Authorities are appealing for information after a childcare centre in Sydney's West caught fire in the early hours of Monday morning. The ABC reported the blaze took place at Plate Alone facility in Castle Hill, another Plate Alone centre in Sydney's Turramurra on Friday. We learnt that at 1:30am this morning, emergency services were called to a business in Excelsior Avenue, Castle Hill, following reports of a fire. Fire and rescue were at the scene, extinguished the blaze. It caused minor damage in the building, and police have established a crime scene and are investigating the cause of the incident. So given the fact that there's two and they're related centres and not far apart, Turramurra and Castle Hill are probably only 20 minutes away from each other by car. So you wonder what exactly is going on there. Is it a protest against things that they may have been happening? Is it an attempt at a cover-up? Or something else entirely, you have to start asking questions when you see a pattern form. That's the point, right?
And Jason, why did that headline have as part of its headline, "And gay and bisexual men can donate plasma today"? What the hell?
Isn't that an astonishing double headline? Now, what we're noticing now in the mainstream, I'll just bring that up. I'll come back for a sec. What we're noticing now in a lot of the newspapers, in order to create a thread of stories, it seems that this is what they're doing now, and they're combining headlines. Murdoch's doing it all the time. And the Guardian's doing it as well. I think it's to keep you on the page, because when you look at the Murdoch press, it's pretty mundane. Most of the stories are garbage, well, of course, but they're just about garbage topics that aren't newsworthy topics. It's just magazine tabloidy stuff. So they're trying to thread different stories. But don't you think it's ironic that you would bring those two things together, but separated by a semicolon, that gay and bisexual men can donate plasma from today? So, of course,
jarring. Truly jarring, that one.
Having said that, I mean, the idea of blood donations of vaccinated and unvaccinated blood, even that is a big deal, because no one's bothered to consider that unvaccinated people have got rights to say, I want unvaccinated blood. How dare I? Imagine that not being a qualification in society today, that you can even ask for a certain type of blood, or at least say that I have reasons, particularly you could be religious reasons, why I can't accept certain types of blood, and why that would be disrespected by a system.
Logic reasons, Jason. The infected blood scandal has been going on in Australia for years. I've been trying to get that guy who speaks out about it, who is himself harmed, on my podcast for years. I can never get through to him. I can never get an answer. But he's Charles always McKenzie, out there, and he stands at the front of the Attorney General's house, and he, talks about the facts. Now, in the UK, they had an infected blood scandal that was 40 years old. And finally, Rishi Sunak, when he was the Prime Minister, apologized for it. But, it's too late for reparations. It's too late for the people who died. The statutes have run out, and this is what they do. So this was before the pandemic. He's talking about infected blood. And actually, there was a young lady I worked with on Neighbours, and her father had become ill, and he'd got a blood transfusion for his illness. And during that illness, they'd infected him, I think, with HIV, so this infected blood has been a big problem for a very long time. So to see that tagged on to the bottom of the story about the childcare centre going up in flames, I find very odd and very suspicious. Makes me think that the mainstream media are also trying to beat algorithms in a way, right? If AI is reading that headline, it puts a friendly, pro-woke headline on the end so that it busts through that algorithm.
Everyone in world of woke, cultural Marxism is oppressed. Everyone. That's the business of cultural Marxism. And so you've got to find someone who's not oppressed in order to take from them. That's what this war really is. And what do you do in the process? What's the best way to do it is to weaken everyone. So I noticed that you shared this one, and I thought I'd bring it up for you as well. Odds of your child getting myocarditis. Look at that. Look at that. Before COVID vax and after COVID vax. Reminds me of another condition that Rain Man had, that the numbers shrunk very quickly. And of course, we learned only recently that a Hep B jab was known to give you a 1,000 times increase in becoming Rain Man as well. And I just say that tongue in cheek in that circumstance because I just don't want to trigger any algorithms, etc., that are going to punish us for bringing out the facts in this situation. Now, staying with Australian news for the moment, this was an interesting headline today. I think this is the one here. I'll just call it up for you. Look at this. Who is the biggest Aussie TV personality of the 21st century? And the story goes that hardly anyone is watching Aussie TV, and you only have to look at this year's Gold Logie nominations to get a view of how bleak things have become. So in this story, and so what's actually happening here is that, the usual suspects get nominated, Hamish Blake, Sonia Kruger, and then they brought up a lady called Lisa Miller from the ABC that no one had heard of, and then they brought up who was the other person? Was Alison Langdon from A Current Affair, and they're calling her P-Plate, a Current Affair host. She, of course, was the lady who famously attacked Craig Kelly and wouldn't let him speak. And of course, Craig Kelly, years later, was proven right all along. But Ali Langdon was in a tailspin, and this whole idea where the prevailing culture had somehow determined that back in the day, if somebody didn't want to take a vaccine, you pitied them because you thought that they were crazy and they were leaving themselves vulnerable to something else. But everyone knew that the vaccine protected you, the individual who took it. So that was the old anti-vax campaign. You just thought people were crazy. And then it changed to become a new anti-vax campaign, which was, if you don't take that vaccine, I therefore am unprotected, even though I have taken it. Which is psychotic. It doesn't make any sense.
That doesn't make you a cooker.
Exactly. So the ones accusing you are the ones that are, because they're psychotic. But why is it that these people, when they were going to nightclubs and they were 100% jabbed, were still getting COVID? So you've already defeated your own argument. But that is my point. That is how far the mentality has shifted. That once you pitied someone, now you were trying to punish them and blame them for your inadequacies, which it's such a nonsense. But not only that, it went all the way up to the highest levels of society, that even politicians were saying that to your face and making out that was a real thing, which is an absolute an embarrassment.
Well, I feel sorry for them. Listen, I'm not going to talk about how, because I'm testing this on myself, but it just came to me this morning. And let's face it, 5 years of thinking, even for someone like Nicola Charles, 5 years of thinking has to end up with some kind of decent, operable solution, right? And I think I have found a way for every single human being on earth, no matter your color, creed, religion, country of origin, country of residence, to protect themselves from medical tyranny. I'm going to attempt to do it on myself today. And if this happens and if this works, I will share it on this show, how you can do it around the world. It is a very simple thing that cannot be challenged, cannot be questioned, cannot be damaged by emergency biosecurity orders. And so let me do this, and then I will share it with you. It is the most simple of things. And I truly think, perhaps it's arrogant to say so, I truly think this could be the most monumental pushback on what they're attempting that has ever happened. And it would also blow the brains out of all their computers trying to deal with the amount of people doing it. But I'm feeling very positive, because there's been a lot of complicated ways to push back against these people, to fight the algorithms, to stay sovereign, to fight for freedom in your country, and you believe in constitutions and all that kind of stuff. But there's a very simple, lawful thing you can do. And fingers crossed, if it works out for me, it'll work out for you.
Well, wow. It's exciting. I can't wait to hear more. Now, back on that story on the Australian TV personalities, this is what's happening. So there was, I caught this morning as I was taking the car in for service, and I caught on one of the FM radio stations. They were talking about this story. That's what piqued my interest in it. And they took phone calls and they asked people what they were actually watching on Australian free-to-air TV. And the panelists were saying that one panelist said that he hadn't watched free-to-air TV for 6 years since his TV aerial broke. He said his kids would never know how to switch the TV on, and so they weren't interested. But they started taking phone calls. And what was interesting was that the people that were still watching free-to-air TV had decided that they either couldn't afford streaming services or weren't interested or whatever it was. They just didn't have them. But they all said that they were watching Channel 9's A Current Affair. So what it alluded to, according to the panelists, was that it was a cost thing. So therefore, affordability, cost of living. That's why they watched it. So they had their favourites. Now, I find that interesting in itself. So you've got to be able to afford to, on certain things. I mean, you can all watch plenty of social media for free, but if you're wanting to watch certain shows, programs on the various different streaming platforms, you've got to pay for it. It's not particularly expensive, but and it's certainly a lot cheaper than what cable TV became or was. So there were options. Anyway. It leads me to this, that this is what was published in the paper today. This is a list of what is considered to be the top echelon of Australian TV stars in the 21st century. So since literally going back to the Sydney Olympics, have a look at these names. So you might not even recognise some of them. Eddie Maguire.
Read them out, because I can't see that. It's very small, and I'll give you my review.
I am going to read them out. So Eddie Maguire, Carl Stefanovic, Carrie Bickmore, Rebecca Gibney, Georgie Parker, John Wood, Rove McManus, Hamish Blake, Sonia Kruger, and Kate Ritchie. That is the top 10. So they're very
safe. Kate Ritchie was always very safe. They're very safe choices, and these are not random people that they've pulled out of their arse. These are not people who have created the largest social media followings or the largest viewer numbers. What these people are is a list of people who would not speak out against the establishment if their life literally depended on it. And you know what I'm saying when I tell you that. They would not speak out. They would not comply. They are obedient servants to the machine. It's the same in Hollywood. It's the same kind of list of people in Hollywood, right? These people don't speak out. They're happy to earn lots of money being famous faces on your television, and you're the ones who've made them famous and made them wealthy. But when it comes to protecting you, advising you, being truthful with you, they're not interested. They've only got self-interest, Jason, and that's how they made it onto that list.
Well, when you break it down a little further, Eddie Maguire, so he became a game show host for Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in its heyday, and of course was a sports commentator and on Victorian football. Carl Stefanovic hosted Today Show, briefly hosted A Current Affair. Carrie Bickmore was the original Project star. Rebecca Gibney, a genuine dramatic actor, and it seemed that they always made these specials, and it didn't matter what they made with Rebecca Gibney, they were always a hit on TV, and she'd been nominated or won Golden Logies a few times. Georgie Parker, again, an actress who was famous from, All Saints, and I think she did Play School for a time, and was another one of the from the golden era of drama, if you will. John Wood, another actor, Blue Heelers, etc. I always thought that Rafferty's Rules was a better show back in the 80s. It was a terrific show set in Manly Courthouse. Rove McManus, who's had, I guess he's had more chances than anyone at Randwick Racecourse in terms of his career, and he's had every blessing given to him, apart from the tragedy of losing his his wife Belinda Emmett. But Rove's sort of been a great underachiever. Hamish Blake gifted the Lego Show, which is probably the #1 ratings winner, and it's a terrific show if you watch it. If you're a family, it's one of those few shows that's actually designed for family. But imagine that's your career that you are getting paid 7 figures to host a show like that, a reality show about Lego, and that's it, and you just get to clown around. That's the level of your skill. Sonia Kruger, Strictly Ballroom dancing star. Tiffany, what was her name? Tina Sparkle, who then goes on to a fairly lengthy career. She's done very well and looks incredible for her age. And then Kate Ritchie, soap star and radio host, and a little bit of controversy occasionally in her career. But there's not a whole lot there, is there? When you really look at it, you got one or two news people, mediocre at best. Like, I don't think Carl Stefanovic reached what Ray Martin necessarily was able to achieve. Rebecca Gibney, Georgie Parker, John Wood, TV actors, none of them really went on to do anything in the world of cinema. And there you are. And I just find it just
not the benchmark, Jason. You don't have to go on and do something in the world of cinema. First, I have 2 questions. And I want you to answer these, Jason Olbourne, Australian. Who puts this list together? Who decides on who gets nominated for Logies? Do we know who the board is?
Well, the Logies were always meant to be voted on by the viewers of TV, the readers of TV Week magazine. That was kind of where it came from. Now, there's some of them
but this is different. Yeah.
Some of them appear like some of the acting stuff, but most of them are, again, the readers of TV Week magazine. But let me ask you this: has anyone seen a copy of TV Week magazine anywhere in the last 10 years?
I did 5 covers for TV Week, 5 covers, and you would think it would ping in my brain if I saw it or noticed it, and it doesn't. And my second question is this, Jason, right? This is Australia, right? 2025. Where's the diversity? Where are the Aboriginal Australians? Perchance. There's been a couple of famous Aboriginal Australians who really stood out. Where are they on that list?
Yeah, well, there it is. Well, I think if you're a dramatic actor, you'd want to have, I guess you'd want to be in a feature film somewhere in your life if that was what you wanted to do. I look at, Jeffrey Rush, and then, of course, there was a scandal around Jeffrey Rush. There was, and then, look, you kind of got to do multiple things, don't you, in any field? I know
you're not going to make me talk about muggers because my boobs are in that movie, right? That was the only Australian movie I did. It was called Muggers. It was really great. It was with Matt Day, and that's how I met my first husband, Jason. And it was such a funny story, actually. It was they played 2 uni students in Melbourne, and they basically mugged people for their kidneys at raves to order, right? Because they had the right blood type and they had wealthy people ready to buy these organs. Wow. And I played Belinda, the receptionist at the university, who was fully on board because I was the one that researched the blood types and told them who to mug at the raves. It was actually quite a good movie. It got a really good review from that grey-haired lady that used to do that movie review show. She thought that movie should have done a lot better than it did. I think they probably got me in hoping my fans would make it more successful. But yeah, I remember the day, where they said, oh, we're going to do a closed set. Is it okay potentially in this sex scene if a boob falls out? And I was like, God, here we go. My first movie and I've arrived in Hollywood. It's just very, I've always said this throughout my career as an actress, there is a cliquey little list in Australia, and I never understood how you entered the cliquey little list. And they don't even hold auditions for certain things. You can only get small parts on these shows, guests on things like Water Rats and all that, because you're not in the cliquey little numbers of actresses that they're prepared to use. Now I'm older, I understand how you got in that clique. You kept your nose clean and your head down, and you turned up and you did your job, and you never spoke about the government of the day. You never spoke out about anything. And for my money now, the world has changed, right? You're looking at the old century. We're in the new century. Yep. And I think it's hard to ask people to vote on that, the people that kept their nose clean so they could keep the dollars rolling in. I know it's harsh. I know it's a harsh thing to say, and she's just a bitter actress. It's not that. That is a shoddy list of people to present. For an entire century, come on.
I know that is the point. There's got to be a deeper talent there somewhere, but that's it. And so it's exposing the fact that it is weakened and free-to-air TV has changed. But then you just look at viewing habits and what people actually are interested, and how much things have changed. Who would have thought that you could become a multi-millionaire by unwrapping kids' toys on TV, on social media? I mean, that's an industry now. The whole thing has changed.
You don't become a multi-millionaire telling the truth. So that's why they don't do that.
No, you certainly don't. But at the same stage, you get to look. You get to make a news show. You get to present facts, opinions, and I tell you what, though, that I was out there yesterday giving a speech to a wonderful group near my area, and the amount of people that said, "We love Nicola Charles. We love watching the show. We've been watching for years." And the other thing that a lot of people said to me is they love it when you don't wear the beanie on the Daily Australian. So there you go. And here you are without even being told.
I'll give you the secret. I'll give you the secret, ladies, because ladies watching, you want to know and you ask me, right? The secret is, well, sometimes it's to do with the roots issue, and I haven't done them, as you can see. I'm rocking the non-fixed roots issue, so sometimes that irks me, and I put the beanie on. But the other one is just the plain old everyday person bad hair day. So I have a lot of children, a lot of animals, and a lot of work to do outside of this work, and I don't really take care of my tresses as well as I should. So if I'm having a bad hair day, and if you are having a bad hair day, your best friend is a beanie, or as our Canadian guests tell us, a toque.
That's right. There you go. Well said. Well, let me give you some more stories. We've got plenty to get through. Here's another one for you. We've just learnt that Israel has rejected the WHO and the IHR regulations for this deadline of July 19 this week. James Roguski asking when it will be that the United States will do the same, because they're sort of still linked. And of course, here in Australia, well, we kind of know what Albanese is going to do. He's just going to ignore it until we're signed up to it. But isn't it interesting that the country that went all in on Pfizer during COVID has gone the other way and pulled out, and they're not the only country to do so. But it's a good, solid start. Meanwhile, in other news, Georgia Maloney has apparently not voted to impeach Ursula von der Leyen in the EU Parliament. That was a bit of a surprise there.
Traitor.
So again, I don't know the facts behind it. I don't know again why you would seemingly not go in the direction that was expected. The question might be, is there enough grounds for it or something else? But we watch again this space. It's just it's a uncomfortable but scary story just the same. Why you wouldn't, when there's an opening politically to make a change. There has been a plane crash of a medical plane in London at South End, I should say, airport in Essex. A few more pictures that we've seen there of the explosions going on. The
chip
pilots
malfunction. Digital world, Jason. It's not safe. Never has been.
Yeah. And so, again, this is ordinary as well. And we're just learning about some results there from the plane crash in Air India, where the fuel lines were seemingly both switched off, and the pilots not asking each other, and neither had done that. So that was an odd occasion as well there. So, look, some horrific stories nonetheless. And the last thing we want to do is to be talking about continual plane crashes. But we've got concerns for pilots. We've got concerns for, as you said, digital technology just the same, and the ease at which these things are going on. In another story, 2 people have been killed in a shooting at a church in Kentucky in the United States. The suspect, who's now dead, first opened fire at an airport in Lexington, Kentucky, shooting a state police officer at 11:36 a.m. local time. The same gunman then showed up 24 kilometres away at Richmond Road Baptist Church, where a second shooting took place. The suspect shot a trooper and then fled the scene, ending up at the church where he was then taken out. So another day, another story there, another tragic loss of life. Now, here's a video I'm going to play for you now. This is, I think this was taken in Florida, where a fellow has attacked MAGA supporters, and he's been taken out himself and arrested. Take a look at this clip.
Hey, show me your shorts, boy. Look at this guy. Look at you, bro. Come on. Good job, guys. Put you in the back. Come close. Jump. Come close. You ready? You ready? Oh, you want something? You ready? Come on. Your car. Do you see your car? Get his car. Steal his car. Get in his car, man. Oh, yeah. Yeah, beat his out. Yeah! Let's go! Let's go! Yeah! There we go. We have the arrest.
Never a dull moment, right? But interesting just the same that you just can't stop your car in the middle of the street and go and attack people and just think that it's okay. So at least there's
You reckon?
something being played out there in real time. But this is not how
Yeah.
it's been, right? If you think of the George Floyd riots, etc. Anything goes these days.
Well, I was thinking, Jason. I know we've not got stuff for this today, but I just read this morning and had fired back at our Prime Minister Anthony Albanese that he spent over 140 million of our tax dollars on I think it's Trip.com enticing Chinese tourists to come to Australia. And as I said, I saw lots of these Chinese tourists at the market that I was asked to QR code into, and I have no problem with people coming to Australia as tourists. I have a problem with him spending 140 million on the advertising. But the thing is, I questioned Albo underneath his post and I said, have you warned these prospective tourists of their chance of being attacked with a machete? Right, because that's what's going on in Australia. I'm assuming these rather glamorous ads that you've paid for that are going out in China are not wording them up about the very great risks that we have in Australian society now. I worry every time my teenage daughters go to a mall, a shopping centre, because these things have not been checked and these people don't end up in jail. So it's just madness what's going on out there in society. Madness. Our bureaucrats have so much to answer for. It's just unbelievable.
They most certainly do. Now, we haven't touched on much of US news that sort of happened over the weekend, but I thought that this story here is quite interesting. This is Jamie Dimon, the JP Morgan CEO. He says he's completely trashed Democrats. It's a story from the Gateway Pundit. They're idiots, big hearts and little brains. They do not understand how the real world works. So this is the second big name person to sort of out the Democrats at this point. The other being Mark Cuban, only last week, saying that he would support Elon Musk's America Party. I'll play you a bit more of the clip here. It's interesting to have a look again at what's happening as the Democrats are getting called
Another
out.
one in here. America's top banker Jamie Dimon criticizing Democrats. He said, quote, I have a lot of friends who are Democrats and they're idiots. I always say they have big hearts and little brains. They do not understand how the real world works. Almost every single policy rolled out failed. It kind of reminds you of what Winston Churchill said long ago. If you're not a socialist when you're young, you have no heart. If you're not a conservative when you're old, you have no brain.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that there are too many of those people are not maintaining the excuse that they're young and foolish and believe young and foolish things. There are a lot of older people. I mean, my God, look at Bernie Sanders. He can't use the 20-year-old I'm a socialist excuse in his case. No, I think we are a very divided society, and we're becoming more divided in many, many ways. Social media, digital age, the advent of AI is going to accelerate all of these things. It's really, really throwing all kinds of things into the mix that we haven't seen before. I'm an immigrant to this country. I'm proud of this country. I'm a proud American. I've lived here for 30 years. I think it's the greatest country in the history of the planet, and I think it will continue to be. I really, so I will end up by disagreeing with Tom Sowell. I think America will make it, but it's going to be a bumpy ride. Fasten your seatbelts.
We got to end this segment on a positive note, but you're here for the whole hour. Which is
I think that's fascinating because at last they're being called out for the hypocrisy and the idea that you just can't stick to a team and not have to perform or to get results. So that's a big deal. Jamie Dimon, I said Dimon, nobody's perfect, and there you go. But that's a big change. So Mark Cuban's another one on that list there where things are certainly changing. Now,
interesting that he's another egregious Brit. Look, the thing about socialism is, that famous quote that eventually you run out of other people's money. So you can have what I consider all the extremist ideologies you want for your so-called, diverse and equitable utopia. But unless you're going to put your actual money behind it, if you're suggesting that everyone else lives under socialism while you're raking it in as a ruthless stakeholder capitalist, which is what our politicians and our leaders are doing, then you're a liar. You're nothing but a fraud. And that's what we're existing under.
Yep. It is a system that is completely corrupt, and we're told that it is perfectly clean. So we're now at the complete ends of a spectrum now.
Live it. Make them live it. Is Albo going to live it? Is Albo going to live in one of these new prefabbed homes shipped in from China for the housing crisis? No, he's not. He's bought a $4.6 million home on the beach, no less, telling us that climate's going to make the sea levels rise. Obviously not, because he's bought a beach house like Obama, like Biden, like everyone else in power, right? Come on. Bill Gates lives on a lake in Seattle. You know, these people are just out and out liars. They make a fortune from this stuff. Al Gore made over 300 million from lying about the climate in the 90s. This is the second time I've lived through this crap, and I'm not going to put up with it. They're absolute frauds. And if any of us ran around with this fraudulent behavior, we wouldn't get away with it. We wouldn't get away with selling something that was safe and effective if it turned out to kill people and was harmful. Just the way they've apparently the banks have sold silver that they don't yet have as actual silver. I think they've done it with gold as well. So you've got these precious metals. The Bank of England, by the way, shamefully is the biggest perpetrator of this. So they've sold more of this resource than they have. Now, if we did that, if we advertised something and took the money for the product, but found out we didn't actually have the product, we'd go to jail for fraud. But if you're a bank, it's absolutely fine, apparently.
Yeah, of course. Too big to fail, right? Yeah. And when you get that said to you, that's when you have a system of tyranny. If there's not one rule that's for everyone, that there's two sets of rules, you are now living in a tyrannical society. So thanks, Obama, for giving us that situation way back in 2008. Well, there is a war going on. There is no question. And when you see the Director of National Intelligence let you in on how it's really playing out, I think you'll be provided with at least a bit of confidence to know that you're not being bluffed in that regard. Now, there's a lot to get through. There's a series of clips I'm going to play. I'll start with this one from Tulsi Gabbard. Take a look.
You think the campaign was hard? You think what President Trump went through was hard? And it was. The road ahead will not be easy. I can attest personally that in my work as the Director of National Intelligence, the deep state is fighting us every step of the way. And it exists within every single federal agency. And so I feel the same frustration that I see many of you expressing on X or in different platforms about why aren't things going faster? Why aren't we getting results more quickly? I feel this frustration every single day. We are pushing hard. Know that they are pushing hard back.
How about that? That's a big deal, because you are now being told that there is a war, that this is not legitimate, that these people are not on the same team, coming from the Director of National Intelligence. So you might argue, oh yeah, whatever, but no, you're being told. Now, remembering that she's the woman that took over.
Talk's cheap, Jason.
Well, what are we doing here? What are we backing up every day for if we're just talking?
But we're not doing speeches telling people, yeah, you know, we know it and we're going to fix it. You know, we're trying to just survive and find our way through this. Obviously, there's a war going on. You know, these weather events that are happening, they're war attacks, right? That these are these oligarchs that can control the weather, and they do not give a crap who's the president, who's the prime minister. They are going to attack, and they seem to be attacking in America with these weather wars, conservative Republican states. They're going to attack them knowing that it's our tax dollars that are going to have to clear it up, that it's our people that are going to die and lose their homes and everything they've got. It's already started in Australia, where certain parts of Queensland around the Brisbane area can't get flood insurance, right? In case this is Australia. What do you mean you can't get flood insurance? You can't deny people insurance. The question then begs, what do you know about what's coming that you won't allow people not to get flood insurance? These are weather wars that are going on. I shared on my X account, my social media this morning, a clip taken from a helicopter. The helicopter pilot sent it to me of what that storm over Texas looked like, and there was fire in it. You know, you talk about space lasers, right? There was fire in it coming down to Earth. We saw it in Maui. We've seen it in so many places. In Australia, was it Lisbon, was flooded out, and it's coming back as a smart city. These people do what they like. And here's the thing. Blame the bankers, blame Mossad, blame the CCP, blame the Crown and the City of London, blame the Democrats, blame whoever you want. We don't know the names of the people who are doing this to us. We will never know their names. That's how they operate. So they don't care that we're running around. They don't care that we're saying it's the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers or the Bilderbergs or Soros or Bill Gates. They don't care about those people. They're out there. They're the ones that they're allowed to be famous. The ones that are doing this, we don't know about. And I'm disappointed because I'll tell you now, someone like Trump, where he's come from, he knows who they are. Tulsi Gabbard probably knows who they are. There are good guys out there who could help us who know who these people are. Geez, Pauline Hanson probably knows who they are. But we'll never know their names because they live in a different world to us. And that cannot be allowed to continue. They're essentially saying to us, Jason, with this banking stuff, with artificially, selling gold and silver that wasn't there. They're saying to us, oh, if you want to succeed and get rich, you need to lie. You need to defraud. You need a scheme. You need a plot. You need a conspiracy. Right? That's how your success. Be honest. You're going to get taxed into oblivion. And you're not going to ever be able to raise yourselves up. So don't talk to me about equity. You're a bunch of liars, crooks, frauds, and criminals. And no wonder you don't want us to know what your name is.
Well, maybe, just maybe, things are going to change. We know that Florida has banned weather manipulation, and Marjorie Taylor Greene raised that in in the Congress, in the House, the same thing, to be able to make it a felony to manipulate the weather. So there's something. Now, we're going to get into a bit of the Epstein coverage in a moment, but before we get there, I want to play this clip from John Solomon, and this is in relation to the fallout where it was expected, well, not expected, but it was suggested that there was dissent amongst the ranks with the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. So Kash Patel put this out earlier. The conspiracy theories just aren't true, never have been. It's an honor to serve the President of the United States, and I'll continue to do so for as long as he calls on me. And interestingly, people were suggesting that Matt Gaetz was going to be brought in to take over from Pam Bondi, and that's entirely untrue as well. So that particular scenario there. But what I'll do now is...
appreciate the reference to conspiracy theories, Kash. Very disappointing.
Well, he's saying that there are conspiracy theories that he's quitting, and he's not quitting.
Jason, there's discussion and debate about it. It's not a bloody conspiracy theory. This is how you invalidate what someone is saying. This has been a shit show all weekend, right? You're going to explain now. This has been a shit show about this all weekend. That there's
I'll argue the opposite. If you're saying Kash Patel's going to quit, and Kash Patel gets out and says, I'm not quitting, so you made it up. It is a conspiracy theory. It's total bullshit. And what you're trying to do... Sorry?
Who made it up? Who came
out with whoever's talking about it, whoever's coming out and saying that Kash Patel's going to quit, he's not quitting. This is, okay, I'm going to show you the punchline in a minute, but what I want to do is I want to play John Solomon now, then we're going to play Benny Johnson, and then I'm going to show you the punchline. Watch this.
Kash Patel is going nowheres, and I think next week, over the next 10 days, the base who's been wondering, where's all that accountability? They're going to get some big surprises over the next week concerning where the conspiracy began a few weeks before Crossfire Hurricane was open, and when it ended, all the way in 2024, when they were still trying to pursue Donald Trump to keep him from winning the presidency. There's a big case that's been built by the Justice Department and the FBI. It's been masked by a lot of this infighting and drama and soap opera stuff, but the truth of the matter is MAGA base Americans are going to be happy when they see where this is all heading in the next few weeks. Kash Patel is going nowhere. I hope Dan Bongino isn't going anywhere, but I do think he's going to take some time over the weekend to think that through.
So John Solomon is certainly connected. Very interesting comments there. Now, what's going to come in August? Well, we'll wait and see, and we've all been dragged along for many, many years. So let's go to Benny Johnson, covers it well, particularly on the announcement from Trump and the reading between the lines. And this is what Trump has done all along. But let's play Benny's clip now, and we'll come back.
This is how things go from bad to worse, and it just went thermonuclear with President Trump taking a side in the epic battle royale between Dan Bongino and Pam Bondi. Dan Bongino throwing down the gauntlet, saying, I will not remain at the FBI if Pam Bondi remains as the Attorney General. And there was a lot of rumors that Kash Patel would be joining him. In this post by Kash Patel, sent at 2:30 p.m. today. The conspiracy theories about me are not true. It's an honor to serve the President of the United States. I'm going to continue to serve for as long as he calls on me. Now, it took Cash a while to post that, so you have to assume that things were really rocky. President Trump just dropped this thermonuclear bomb on the entire situation. What's going on with my boys, and in some cases gals? They are all going after Attorney General Pam Bondi, who is doing a fantastic job. We are on one team, MAGA. And I don't like what's happening. We have a perfect administration, the talk of the world. Selfish people are trying to hurt it. All over a guy who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein. For years, Epstein, over and over and over again. Why are we giving publicity to files written by Obama, Crooked Hillary, Comey, Brennan, and losers and criminals in the Biden administration who conned the world with the Russia hoax, 51 intel agents and laptop from hell? They created the Epstein files, just like they created the fake Hillary Clinton, Christopher Steele dossier that they used against me. And now the so-called friends are playing right into their hands. Okay. So President Trump has acknowledged that the Epstein files exist here. President Trump has acknowledged that the files were written and that there is something there. He says that they were written, however, by his enemies and therefore will not be released. Whoa, what? That's new in this entire zeitgeist. This is something that is wildly interesting. And then he goes all in on supporting Kash Patel and Pam Bondi. No mention of Dan Bongino. Just in, President Trump attempts to shut down Epstein criticism, saying, let's keep it that way and not waste time on energy on Jeffrey Epstein nobody cares about. He also goes on to say Pam Bondi is doing a fantastic job. I can tell you this. I gave a speech last night, and a lot of people cared about the Epstein files. As a matter of fact, this audience really, really cares about Jeffrey Epstein, and knowing that we're not paying tax dollars to protect predators, right, or to a predator cult, that matters. Again, by admitting that the Epstein files are real and have been written and that you've read them and you don't like their contents and they were written by your enemies, doesn't make the most compelling case. Holy moly. This is what's going to melt down the internet right now.
3 things. Number 1, Benny Johnson seems concerned about what Trump has said. Number 2, Trump has confirmed that the files are there, and yet they've told us publicly there are no files. It's a nothing burger. There's nothing to see here. And 3, Trump says in that tweet or Truth Social, whatever it was, the man that never dies, Epstein. Now, I'm sorry, words matter. That's what I've been told too.
Well, there's certainly enough interest and circumstantial evidence to suggest that he didn't throw that line away for nothing, given we played the Megyn Kelly clip, given we've got that 4chan, that little thing about the swap out, given that the nose doesn't quite match and looks like Tony Rodham. So there's enough circumstantial evidence to keep it going. So here's a tweet that came out almost 2 years ago to the day. It's popped up again today. Take a look. Donald Trump Jr. Show us all the Epstein client list now. Why would anyone protect these scumbags? Ask yourself this question daily, and the answer becomes very apparent. And so it appears that we are in a holding pattern deliberately until we can get the mainstream news to talk about it. It permeates right down into the people that only follow mainstream news. And I think it's interesting that we're getting headlines such as these in Murdoch Press. Nobody cares. Trump fumes over Epstein drama, and they write another story about it. And we keep reading about it. Mainstream, there it is. It's being brought to the surface, as John Solomon tells us to expect within weeks, particularly something big is going to happen. Now, having said that, Trump yesterday was at the FIFA World Club Championship game where I think Chelsea won against Paris Saint-Germain 3-0. There's some photographs of him there at the ground. There he is, where's the trophies being handed out. And there he was, and he was interviewed after the game. I'll play this for you now.
You talk about winning, you talk about making America the greatest again. Do you see any instance in where America could start dominating in football on a global stage?
Well, I can tell you we're doing very well on the other stage, on the political stage, on the financial stage. We have I was just in Saudi Arabia. I was in Qatar. I was in UAE. Here we have Qatar, and the big presence they have. But all of the leaders, and then you look at NATO. All of the leaders said a year ago your country was dead, and now you have the hottest country in the world. There's a lot of truth to that. We were doing very badly as a country. We had an incompetent administration, and now we have a hot country. It's really hot, and I think the soccer is going to be very hot here too. It already is. It's gotten a lot of play, and I think with the play come the great players, and I think it'll do very well.
Very hot.
American players are not American teams, and American players do not feature heavily in global soccer, let's say. So congratulations to Paris Saint-Germain. Did they win? Did they beat Chelsea?
No. Chelsea won 3-0.
Oh no, I don't like Chelsea for a very good reason that I can't share on this show. Boo, boo. Chelsea supporters are horrid. You're all horrid. They're all rich and horrid.
Wow. Well, look, this hot thing is interesting. Trump's use of language. So someone's produced this item here, August 1. It's a Q post from 6 years ago. The month of August is traditionally very hot. You have more than you can know. Declassification. What it relates to is what John Solomon just told you of 2 weeks. Now, everyone can be anti-Q as much as they want. He just told you that you're getting it in 2 weeks' time, which is when we're going to hit August. And so, obviously, the use of the language, we just talked about the use of the language, and Epstein never dies. We've just brought up a Donald Trump Jr. Tweet from 2 years ago, almost to the day, bringing the same story back up. And when you consider that, you then relate to one of the things that you talked about in the past, this guy.
Okay, so this is a picture. This morning, I was doing something else on my Facebook account because I'm probably going to close my Facebook account, to be honest. There's such a horrible, horrible thing. A Facebook profile is a profile of you for the intelligence agencies, just so you know. But I went through my photos, and there was 5 or 6 of them that were completely blurred out historically on my photo list. And this was one of them. And it said, this is misinformation, that this isn't Biden. And I thought to myself, there was no explanation with that. And I thought, okay, which one isn't Biden, right? Did you grab the other 2 that it put up for me, Jason, that were blurred?
Yeah. Of Biden or the other 2 that you sent me?
The other 2. So there was this one of Biden that was blurred out for misinformation because this isn't Biden. No explanation.
What about this
There
one?
was this one about Bill Gates and flu disappearing during the so-called engineered COVID pandemic. And there was another one, this one, which was an actual conference that took place. And I'd circled at the bottom that the conference was focusing on transhumanism. And was it held at the Vatican? It was held somewhere really suspicious. I can't see that. My eyesight's bad.
Yeah, it was at the Vatican. Yeah.
The Vatican holding a transhumanism conference, and it was all blurred out on my photo history, and it said this is misinformation, but this is the actual poster from the conference. So it just goes to show historically how some of these sites have censored us. I got deplatformed for 18 months from Facebook, an 18-month suspension for some of these postings. And now when you look at them historically, like, where's my compensation? I wasn't able to stay in touch with friends and family at a time when it was difficult to do so because many of them are on Facebook, old school friends, that kind of thing, because you decided I was sharing misinformation, which has now been proved is factual. Which one of those isn't Biden, Jason? We're told it's all of them.
All of them. And the earlobe change. I was told by people that, don't you know anything? Facelift, and you can take an unattached earlobe and attach it as part of a facelift. Didn't you know that? I didn't.
Yeah, but is art like everything's different on him?
I know, and of course, there's that famous one with that rubbery neck that you see him from behind, and it doesn't look like he's actually skin. Same thing, of course. It's amazing, isn't it? So then you ask yourself, well, if this was an actor, and yet the actor has dementia, that those stories don't quite make sense. So is Joe Biden, if there was a real Joe Biden and he's not in the picture and there's an actor playing him, is the actor the one with the dementia, or is that the character that he's meant to be playing? And that's why you got the doctor last week taking the 5th and not giving any information. But the doctor was asked a question if he was asked ever to lie, and he took the 5th. Now, that is not a question
That's
about
your
medical
answer.
history.
That's your
right.
answer. If you
That's
ask
right.
someone a question and if by answering it they incriminate themselves in a crime, that's what taking the fifth is about. You're
Correct.
allowed to not incriminate yourself. So there's your answer, right? That means everyone in the room knows and you don't have to incriminate yourself. Thank you very much.
Correct. So, but this is one of those stories that almost the idea now of the mask, if Biden was masked, actually backfires because it kind of does, because if you then find out that an actor was playing the role of a president, well, then everything is null and void. At that point, it's a complete fraud. It's beyond anything. But then who's going to out this information? Why are we allowed to know certain things? Why are we not allowed to know certain things? And is this leading up to something? And I maintain that, of course, it's leading up to something. You couldn't possibly go through this for it not to mean something at the end of it, that the whole thing has been hoodwinked, because you can't believe anything at this point. So why would you walk into a market stall and QR code in because you trust authority when everything that you've been told in your entire life is a lie? And I'm always reminded at that stage by the great Wayne Dyer, when I used to listen to various different talks, and there was one that he talked about a book called The Death of Ivan Illich, who wrote a book, and on his deathbed he asked the question, what if my entire life was a lie? And the amount of times that I have reflected upon that and asked myself the exact same question, what if everything we live in is a lie? You can feel like that's kind of what we're having to deal with here. It is just unbelievable that we are so hoodwinked and confused, and we're trying to unravel it in real time and presenting these stories, etc. We've got one last story I want to get to, and that's Dr. Kirk, who has been, the charges have been dropped in that circumstance. Let's play you this clip because we need some good news at the end of the day. Here we go.
Started. Okay, ready? Okay, we didn't do a big update last night, and I know we've been slow this morning, but officially,
at my direction from Attorney General Pam Bondi, the Justice Department has dismissed charges against Dr. Kirk Moore. Dr. Moore gave his patients a choice when the federal government refused to do so. He did not deserve the years in prison he was facing. It ends today.
Thank you so much for all of the support. We did it. They did it.
He's a hero,
Yes.
official hero, right here.
Two biggest heroes
Dr. Kirk
in all
Yeah,
of the world.
without you or anybody, okay? With all the
Chris, you are
support that
just
we
as
had.
much a hero.
Thank you, everybody. Such great support this week. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, all the support that
Everybody.
we've had. I mean, we can't begin to start telling what it is. My mom, my fiance, my kids, my son. Okay, I can't start naming names because I'll leave somebody out. So I really appreciate all the support. The two rallies that we had this week, the article written by Died Suddenly, obviously had a huge effect on what happened today. And I just want to thank everybody for that. Thanks for attending that. Thanks for reposting it. And love you guys. Thank you.
Love you. Thank you so much.
So that had to happen, right? Because there was legal precedent. So there was a nurse in Germany who also decided to inject people or give people the option of injecting with a saline solution, salt water, a nothing burger, if they were nervous about being a medical experiment with mRNA. And she too, no charges were laid against her. That was long and protracted. So what they do is the case itself is the punishment because it's so stressful. And that particular doctor in the United States, he was facing years and years in jail. And I can guarantee you, if Kamala Harris had won the US federal election, he would be in jail. That's how that would stand. So that is positive news that Pam Bondi stepped in there in the Justice Department. I mean, it's crazy, right? It's crazy. We should all have a choice. And if my plan goes to plan, you will.
Wonderful. Well, let's hope that new ideas, new horizons, new chances, new choices are all part of what's going on. And for the Daily Australian, that's one of the most important things, is to present you with a new choice of how you consume the news from in Australia and around the world, with analysis from different perspectives and points of view. And we will argue from the darkest to the lightest, from the left to the right, up and down, whichever way we go, to try and get to what is the truth by presenting facts and opinions in the process. And I can't thank you enough for your support. And I want to say a special thank you to our new our founding member, Evan, who joined up over the weekend. Thank you so much for becoming a founding member. And to all the other subscribers who are now paid subscribers as well. You know, that contribution means the world to us. It means that we get up tomorrow and we fight and we expand. And a little bit of good news is that website is a day closer to finally being launched as well. And you can join if you like. And there's the $75 annual plan where you get to support independent media on thedailyaustralian.substack.com. Thanks so much for participating and supporting. And I tell you what, I look forward to doing it all again tomorrow.
And just to reiterate, we really do need your support. We're not supported by a TV network or any kind of outside media. This endeavor is just Jason and I. And when you subscribe in any way on the Daily Australian, you're subscribing to Jason and I together to this show as an entity, which we share together. But we do also have our own Substack accounts. So if you find that you're getting messages from a couple of different areas, or you've subscribed more than once, that's probably what's happening. But the Daily Australian Substack is the one that we share together, and it's for this show. So thank you for supporting. We really, really do appreciate it. This has been the Daily Australian with Nicola Charles and Jason Olbourne on your Monday morning. We will do this all over again tomorrow.